How is Star Trek the original series here in 2020? Is it still any good? So Star Trek the original series ran from 1966 to 1969, and in those 3 years we saw 80 episodes of the original series crew go on adventures, seek out new life, and explore.
Fascinating.
And I gotta say, Star Trek the original series is still an enjoyable show, but you have to take it with a grain of salt within the context of when it came out in the mid to late 60s, because there's a lot of dated stuff in this show.
But it is interesting.
There is no doubt about it. You just have to just watch it with an eye of, yeah, that's just how things were back then, and that's how things were done back then. Because even though I'd say at least half of the episodes of the show are very enjoyable, there's the other half that are just not great in today's standards. Even as a Star Trek fan, and I love Star Trek, there's just some episodes in the original series that are just really bad to watch. They're almost insufferable. And that even goes for the technical finale of the Star Trek the original series. I think that is actually one of the worst episodes of the whole series. Now there's a few out there, and I'm sure people would tell you their least favorite, but maybe it's just because it's the last one I watched this a couple weeks ago. But the last episode of the series wasn't a finale at all, because I mean, that's how stuff was done back in the 60s. Like, I get it, but that episode is so dated and so bad. I won't spoil anything here, but it's not a great episode to say the least. But it's just sad that that was technically the finale of the series. And I know we got the movies later on, but still, it's just kind of sad that's how the series ended. But getting back to the better half of the series, there are some really great episodes that are very thought-provoking and are the true definition of Star Trek. When you think of Star Trek, you think of stuff that is thought-provoking, progresses us as humans, so forth. It does that type of logic to you. It makes you think a little bit. And there's a lot of those episodes that do that, especially like I'd say the first episode where they meet the Klingons, they meet the Romulans, and there's some other episodes sprinkled in there that really make you think hard and show you how great Star Trek truly is. Now, of course, there are some growing pains within the characters themselves. Now, getting to the first pilot of Star Trek, of course, there was a completely different captain. That was Captain Pike, of course, and there's a whole different crew other than Spock. But we're not going to divulge too much into that, because it actually gets touched on really well in Star Trek Discovery, even though it gets touched on later on in TOS. But Star Trek Discovery actually did a pretty good job kind of going back to it. But nonetheless, there is some growing pains with all the characters, even Kirk to Spock to Bones to Uhura, all of them. They all go through their growing pains, but there are moments where they all stand out at least a little bit. Even though a lot of the characters don't do all that much, I'd say like Uhura, Chekhov, Sulu, they don't really do all that much. There's some shiny moments they may have, but really they don't do all that much in the show. It really comes down to Kirk, Bones, Spock, and Scotty sometimes will do something. Going into this whole thing, I thought they all had a little bit more to contribute, but really it is a true trifecta of Kirk, Bones, and Spock, and a little bit of Scotty sprinkled in there. And I didn't know that kind of coming into the original series. Of course, I knew of the characters, but I just didn't know like what to expect. But after watching it, it is definitely the Spock, Bones, and Kirk show. And it's probably for the best, honestly, because those three characters are the best written and probably most in-depth characters that they have on the show. And they do have the most shiny moments, I'd say, throughout the series run, especially Spock and Bones. To me, in my opinion, those two are the best characters in the entire show. Now, you may love Kirk, and I do enjoy Kirk at times, but there's just times that I'm just not a super big fan of Kirk. And it's not how Shatner portrays him, it's just his character himself that I just don't love sometimes. But Bones and Spock, I always enjoy it. And I love how they butt heads. And I love how Bones is pretty much an exact opposite of Spock. And I love how they bring a different perspective to one thing. It's really cool to see because they're just such polar opposite of people. It's really cool. Now, I'm not going to knock the show for some of the things that get kind of, I guess, corrected later on in like TNG and DS9. Yes, the Klingons look different. Yes, the Romulans look different for the most part. You know, it is what it is. It's the original series. You can't think too hard about it. They actually kind of answer it, and I believe Star Trek Enterprise. I've yet to watch it, so please don't spoil it. But I've heard in YouTube videos that they do kind of answer why the Klingons look so different in TOS compared to, say, TNG. I won't spoil it, but there is an answer out there in Star Trek lore, so if you're that curious about it, just give it a quick search. I'm sure something will pop up. Usually that type of stuff would bother me, but I give it a pass because it is the original series, and budgets and technology and prosthetics and stuff just weren't very great back then. So it's really not that big of a deal that the Klingons and Romulans and whatever characters out there don't look exactly the same as, say, you'd see them in TNG or DS9 or Voyager or whatever. So I give it a pass. It is what it is. It's a product of its era. Probably the thing that honestly annoys me the most in the original series, I don't know if anyone will agree with me or not, but the sound mixing is horrible, and it bothers the hell out of me. Now, I wouldn't be bothered by it. I'd just be like, oh, it's a product of its era if it wasn't remastered. But since it was remastered, the score and themes that are played within the show shouldn't be so loud compared to the dialogue that is said on screen. To me, and it's not just my TV, because I've listened to it on iPad, I've listened to it on different TVs, the dialogue shouldn't be overtaken by the scores of, like a transitional scene, or when they're out in space on the Enterprise, there's always a score playing. It shouldn't be so loud that you want to almost turn down your TV when those scenes happen. And once the next scene happens where there's going to be dialogue, that you have to almost turn up the volume because you want to hear what they're saying. But then the next scene is going back to where there's going to be a transitional scene and there's going to be a score and you have to turn it down. Like the sound mixing is horrible in my opinion. And I get it. It's old, but you'd think when they remastered it 10, 11 years ago, whatever it was, they would have fixed that. Or maybe they wanted to keep what it felt like back in the 60s. I guess that's what they wanted to do. But to me, I would have fixed that because it's just kind of annoying that the sound mixing is just so off, at least in my opinion. Maybe you don't feel the same way, which, hey, that's awesome. But to me, it is just really annoying that it's not mixed well. Touching back to the characters, I think something that would have made the show a little bit better if they would have gave more moments to the other characters to shine a little bit more. I know I kind of touched on it earlier that Chekhov, Sulu, Uhura, they don't really have a moment to themselves where they get to shine in a certain episode. And it's kind of unfortunate that they don't, because they're characters that you really want to like, but they just don't get enough time to have any depth to them that you really root for them. I mean, obviously you do, because they're a part of Starfleet, part of the Enterprise, they're part of the show, and they're good guys, but just not enough to like, yeah, that is a great character. Where you could say the same thing about Spock. Spock is a great fictional character, and there's no doubt about it. Where you probably don't say the same thing about, say, Sulu until later on when he gets more depth and character progression through the movies and such. It's just too bad that they didn't do more for those characters within the show, because they had plenty of episodes to do so. Like I said, there's 80 episodes in 3 seasons. That's nuts. So it's not like they didn't have the time to do it, but they just always focused on the trifecta of Kirk, Bones, Spock, a little bit of Scotty sprinkled in there, and that was about it. Not saying it didn't work, but it's just too bad that we didn't get more moments of the other characters. And I know I keep saying this, but I don't want anyone to yell at me. Those other characters were a part of away missions and such, but they just didn't have really a moment to shine, I feel like, compared to the main 3 of Spock, Bones, and Kirk. Hopefully you get where I'm coming from when I'm saying that. To wrap this thing up, Star Trek, the original series, is still enjoyable here in 2020, and it is worth watching if you are a Star Trek fan. I started watching TNG this past summer, and I really dove into Star Trek head first, and I watched everything to the point of the original series. Still haven't watched Enterprise yet, I've been saving that one. But I finally decided to watch the original series, and I kind of saved it pretty much for last because I knew it'd probably be the roughest show to watch. Not because it's not enjoyable, but just because it's just older and it's just much different how it's filmed and so forth compared to, like, say, a modern Star Trek. It just has its rough moments, there's no doubt about it, but I still did enjoy watching it, and I'm glad I did. If you're a Star Trek fan out there, definitely give it a watch. It is worth watching all of the episodes at least once, there's no doubt about it. And then watch the movies. At least you can say then you've watched them. They're definitely worth watching. Make sure to let me know your favorite original series character down in the comment section below. Mine are definitely Bones and Spock. I don't know if I could pick one or the other, but I definitely love those 2 characters the most out of the original series. So make sure to leave down below what is your favorite original series character. And while you're down there, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, that would be greatly appreciated. We finally hit over 800 subscribers, so I want to thank you guys for subscribing to the channel. It is greatly appreciated. I guess it's road to 900 subscribers now, so if we can hit that fairly soon, I guess that would be awesome too. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. Everyone have a great day. Stay safe out there. Peace out.